I love the Indiana Jones movies, or at least some of them. This franchise has always been one of my favorites of all time, and Indiana himself is one of my favorite fictional characters, probably ever. He might be the worst archaeologist of all time, going into a temple or structure that would have taken an ancient people decades, maybe hundreds of years to complete, grabbing one shiny thing and destroying the entire thing on the way out. But that's fine, he's cool. And 80s Harrison Ford, you can't go wrong with that. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg really hit gold with this franchise. I think these boys have got a bright future ahead of them. I sure hope they don't make any bad movies causing their beloved franchises to be butchered in the modern day. These movies just bring me so much joy. There's just so much to love, and honestly in all of these, even the bad ones. But you guys all know that, so let's stop wasting time and get into the ranking of these movies, because that's what you're here for. Also, if my voice sounds kinda weird today, I'm kinda sick. This ranking is only going to contain the main 5 Indiana Jones movies. No books, no video games, no comics, and also no young Indiana Jones movies. Yes, even the one that has Harrison Ford in it.
Well, things can't always be the way you want them to be.
Yeah, this is real. Also, we're gonna do something a little bit different in this ranking video compared to the other rankings I've done. We're gonna go in order of release, and then we'll rank them at the end. I just thought it would flow better. But just like in my other rankings, every movie here is gonna get a score based on the quality of the movie, and then a score of how much I enjoy it. But real quick, before we really get into this, I gotta pay a quick moment of respect. John Williams' soundtrack is amazing. Everybody knows that, so we're not gonna dwell too much on it, but you gotta say it. He's the greatest composer of our age, and this is one of his best soundtracks. We love you, John. You did amazing. So let's get into it, starting with the original. Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of my favorite movies of all time. It is an incredible movie, and spoilers, but it's my favorite one of these. Everything just kinda works in this movie. The actors, the special effects, the action sequences, the humor, the vibes, it all just kinda comes together into a perfect, beautiful product. Everything in this movie is iconic for a reason. Every set, every prop, every costume. This movie's on par with a little movie called Star Wars for some people. Not me, but it's close. I think my favorite scene in this movie is probably the Temple of the Golden Idol in the beginning. You might say that this makes the movie peak in the first 15 minutes. And it kinda does, but the rest is pretty good too. But it's my favorite scene because it's one of the best character introductions of all time. You'll learn everything you need to know about this guy in just a couple minutes. It's great. Also, it's cool and a special effects marvel. The biggest issue with this movie isn't the movie itself, it's that stupid fan theory that Big Bang Theory started, or at least popularized, that Indiana doesn't affect the plot. That's wrong. If he wasn't in it, the Nazis would have taken it to Berlin before they opened it. And even if they decided to open it before taking it, the Nazis would have come and collected it afterwards. Also, it would have taken a lot longer to find it, but they still would have found it. So in case you needed another reason to hate the Big Bang Theory, this is it. This one might also be the movie where Indiana is at his most unhinged. He's a lunatic in all of these, but this one might be the one where he's at his most murderous and crazy. He'll shoot a man in the street, he doesn't care. He'll shoot the driver of a speeding truck in the middle of a marketplace, that's completely fine. I also love how just everybody looks like they're about to shit their pants and pass out for the entire movie, because they were. It just makes everything feel a lot more real. As for the characters, everybody not named Indiana Jones are pretty great as well. Marion is so much fun and the best female lead in any of these. I love her. Sala is also the most underrated character in the franchise, and Bellic and Tot are probably my favorite villains. Honestly, there's not a whole lot you can say about this movie. It's one of the greatest movies ever made, and everybody loves it for a reason. It's just so fun, and one of those movies that's completely impossible to replicate the magic of. Except that one time, but we'll come back to that. I wish I had more to say about this movie other than just, it's really good, but the dumb things of this movie just don't matter. It's about the fun and the adventure. This isn't one of those movies you watch and try not to nitpick. You don't have to nitpick it. It's kind of dumb and it knows it, but that's the point. It's a throwback to 1930s serials, and this is a lot like that. There's very little rules, but there doesn't have to be. It's fine. It's about the vibes. Overall, a perfect movie, one of my all-time favorites. 9 out of 10 quality, 10 out of 10 enjoyment. I liked when Belloc ate that fly. After the success of the first movie, George and Steven got to work straight away on a sequel, and in 1984 we got Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. This one is not as good as the first one, but it's still good. I used to really dislike this one, but having rewatched it for this video, it's alright. It's a fun time. I would like to note though, I did have a pretty high fever when I rewatched this, so maybe it's really bad, but probably not. It's probably pretty good. Out of all the movies, this one is easily the most brutal one. There's a reason that PG-13 was invented specifically for this movie. It's easily the most fucked up one. That's not a bad thing, but it does make the tone of this movie feel very different than the other ones, even when you just consider the original trilogy. As some people might know, this is actually the first movie chronologically, and it's cool to see a little bit less experienced Indiana. He always wings everything, but even more so in this one, especially at the start. Hey, did you guys know that the club is called Club Obi-Wan? Did you know that? It's a really obscure piece of trivia. It has to be brought up every time someone mentions this movie. It's Club Obi-Wan, guys. Isn't that cool? It's from Star Wars. I fucking love Star Wars. It's Club Obi-Wan. Star Wars reference, guys. Star Wars. I completely forgot that this movie opened up with the musical number. That's fun. And speaking of fun, I really like Short Round. I wish he came back in one of these. He's great. He's the son Indiana Jones never had, because the son he does have sucks, but we'll get back to that later. I used to think that Short Round was incredibly obnoxious, but having rewatched this, he's really not. He's fine. He really should have been in the newest one. And had Everything Everywhere All at Once been released like 2 years earlier, he absolutely would have. It turns out that the obnoxious one in this movie is Willie Scott. I hate her. She is easily the worst female lead out of any of these, and that includes the Nazi. She's just constantly screaming, she's obnoxious, and a dick to everyone. I don't like her. I know she's supposed to be annoying, and you're not supposed to like her, but I still don't like her. This one has got some pretty cool action sequences in it. The bridge scene? Awesome. Everyone knows that. The club sequence and the following car chase are very chaotic, but in a good way. Most of the stuff that happened in the temple itself is pretty cool, especially when Indy punches that guy and then he steps out of the dark. That's some good shit. Love that. However, I am not the biggest fan of the minecart chase. It's a technical marvel for the time, and it looks amazing, but it goes on for so long, and it feels like a theme park ride where stuff just kinda happens for the sake of it, like, oh no, we took the wrong turn, oh no, now it's flooding. I don't know, it never worked really well for me. I do love how the moral of this movie is, hey, maybe we shouldn't rob a starving village of their only valuable items. That's great. 7 out of 10 quality, 8 out of 10 enjoyment. Still a pretty good movie, but definitely the weakest out of the original 3. Do you guys remember earlier when I said Raiders was my favorite one of these? Well, it is, but Last Crusade, it's probably better. Raiders is still my favorite, mostly just due to the sheer iconicness of it, but I think Crusade might be the best one. Everything about this movie just clicks. The action, the special effects, the cast, the characters, the humor, it all just works. It's really hard to put into words, but it all just comes together in just a movie you can't ever replicate. I'd honestly forgotten how funny this one was. Out of all of these, this is easily the funniest one. Probably my 2 favorite jokes ever in a movie are "They got us, son" and Marcus trying to blend in. Comedy gold. One of the best parts about this entire movie is easily Henry Jones Sr. I love him. He is an absolute blast. He's just so much fun. Like, he's a prick, but in a good way. He's got like a secret handshake with Marcus. Great character. I wish he was in these movies more. Also, the Grail Diary, one of the coolest props to ever be in a movie. The villains in this one are very solid. Not as good as the first one in my opinion, but they're still pretty great. Elsa in particular is a very well written character. Really like her. Donovan's kinda whatever, but Elsa is great. Also, Hitler's in this. Forgot about that. The opening is a lot of fun as well. I love that Indiana based his entire personality off of just some guy he ran into once. That's funny and very on brand. Also, River Phoenix does a great job as young Indiana. I don't know if you could ever cast this better. Sorry, Sean Patrick Flannery. I'm just gonna burn through some fun things I like. I love that Indy's office is just a storeroom. I love the bit where they try to sneak into the castle. Honestly, the whole castle sequence is great. I love that the real eternal life was the friends we made along the way. I love that Indy is instantly horny the moment he sees Elsa in Venice. That's great. I love the Europe setting for most of this. This is really the only one of these movies, other than the fifth one a little bit, that we do anything in Europe, which is kind of surprising. Most of these take place in a desert, so this is a nice change, even though the ending's in a desert. That's not a bad thing, but Europe is a nice change of pace. The one small nitpick I have about this movie is maybe that the Grail protectors don't really do anything. They show up in Venice for a little bit, then they show up near the end to shoot at the Nazis, and then they all die, and then that's kind of it. They didn't really need to be here. The main one gets a badass line though.
If you don't let go, Dr. Jones will both die! Then we'll die! My soul is prepared! How's yours?
That's some good shit. But much like the first one, there really isn't much I could say about this movie other than I love this is great. You all know that. Every element just works together. This movie is a perfect culmination of two creative geniuses at the absolute peak of their genius, working with a miracle cast and crew at the perfect time in filmmaking. This is impossible to replicate. This one and the first one, this is where adventure movies peaked. The only thing that's ever come close after this is probably the first Mummy. That's a good movie, but it's still not as good as this. Last Crusade is amazing, and I'm not shocking anybody when I give it a 95% quality, 100% enjoyment. Like I said, probably the best adventure movie ever made, and they probably should have just ended here with the final shot of the franchise being the main characters heading off into the sunset. But unfortunately, a good thing can never be left alone, which regrettably brings us to 2008's Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, a movie I have never actually been able to make myself sit through the entire way before this ranking. I've seen the whole thing before rewatching it, but I've never done it all at one sitting. I could never make myself do it. But alas, I trudged through for the sake of content. And honestly, this movie isn't quite as bad as I remember it being. It's very bad, but it's not the atrocity against God I remember it being. For the first, 2/3 of this movie, I actually had the thought, hey, this isn't nearly as bad as I remember it being. I kind of like this movie. And then you just hit that wall and it becomes exactly as bad as I remembered it being. But there is genuinely some good stuff here, especially in the first 2/3. A lot of people will point fingers to the fact that there are aliens in this being the sole reason this movie sucks, but I actually don't think that's true. The entire concept of this franchise is that it's based off of 1930s serials that often had the main character breaking into temples and stuff and treasure hunting and getting a girl, and the whole thing was designed as a throwback to that. Had they kept making the serials from the 30s to the 50s, they would have transitioned to be about aliens. So on paper, the idea of aliens in this isn't the worst idea ever. But, and there's a big but here, allow me to reiterate something. This is not the worst idea on paper. It is not executed well in the slightest. This movie's been talked to death for 15 years at this point, so I'm just gonna gloss over some stuff that sucks and everybody knows sucks, but I have to mention them anyways because, yeah, they're pretty bad. The franchise, designed around some of the greatest practical effects of all time, results in some of the worst and most pointless CGI I have ever seen. Whoever approved some of these gophers deserves to be fired. This movie also contains some of the worst Russian accents I have ever heard. Some of the action sequences are just nonsensical and hard to follow. Not all of them, but definitely some. Some random things just also don't make sense. Like, for example, gunpowder's not magnetic. I don't know what the Russians are firing their guns with, but it sure as hell isn't gunpowder. Somebody should have triple-checked this script. Another thing is, of course, the fridge scene. Everyone knows that this is ridiculous. Indiana's done a lot of incredibly stupid and unrealistic things in these movies, like the tank scene in Crusade, or the car chase in Raiders, or the plane scene in Temple. This is too far. This just does not work. However, I absolutely love the shot directly after where he looks up at the mushroom cloud. That is unironically a really good shot, ushering in a new era for this world and this character. I still hate the fridge though. I also do not like Mutt Williams, because he's Shia LaBeouf. I have never liked him in anything, not since the moment I first saw him in Transformers. Unless we're talking Surf's Up, I can't stand him. He's so obnoxious, and single-handedly drags this movie down even further. I really hate blaming actors for bad movies, because it's usually the director or writer's fault. Like, for example, Hayden Christensen in Attack of the Clones. This is not his fault. But this movie... No, this is Shia LaBeouf. I don't like him. He annoys me. Don't get me wrong, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg are both to blame for most of the stupid things in this movie, but I still hate Shia LaBeouf. A good thing about this movie is the South American setting. The only other time we really spend any time on this continent is the opening of Raiders, and I just really like the setting and the design of a lot of the temples here. Indigenous South American architecture it just really fits the vibe of Indiana Jones. I also like Marion. It's really nice to see an older female character actually do things, and she didn't get treated like Leia in the sequel trilogy. Something I never really understood is how people keep talking about Indiana like he's on his deathbed. He's fine. He's in really good shape. He's not even 60, and besides, he drank from the actual Holy Grail. It's fine. He looks great. I also like this bit.
You're a teacher? Part-time.
That's some good stuff. I like that. A lot of the action in this just isn't up to the standards of the first three. I know I mentioned that earlier, but I don't even know how to describe it. Even just like the fist fights just don't feel right. And that's ignoring some of the larger stuff like the jungle cutter scene. I hate the jungle cutter scene. It's dumb, even for a franchise known for elaborate and ridiculous chase sequences. I also forgot John Hurt's in this because he's wasted. I love John Hurt. He really could have been used better here. But I think my least favorite thing about this movie is that it looks like The Hobbit. I know this predates The Hobbit, but everything's got that soft glow on it. It does not look good. Yeah, this one's bad. Everyone knows that. I don't even find it funny bad. It's just obnoxious. This movie might actually get a whole video dedicated to it one day. Who knows? But for now, we'll leave it with 40% quality, 40% enjoyment. I don't like this movie. And since everyone hated Crystal Skull, it wouldn't be for another 15 years that we would see another one of these. And just this year, we finally saw the release of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And was it good? Did it redeem the franchise from Crystal Skull? Was it worth 15 years of hype? Was it worth dragging the dead franchise out of its grave? Did it make for an amazing final ending of Indiana Jones both as a character and a franchise? I mean, I thought it was okay. I'll be honest, I have very little feelings either way towards this movie. It's just kinda whatever. I went into it with some of the lowest expectations imaginable, and the movie was definitely better than I thought it would be, but I still can't call it good. One of the things I was most worried about was the de-aged opening, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. It looks alright, and it captures the spirit of the originals way better than I thought it would, and it's also just fun. Visually, the de-aging itself definitely isn't the strongest that's been done in the last couple of years, even by Disney. The best is probably Luke in Book of Boba Fett, but unlike Luke, Indiana actually emotes and isn't just a static robot, and it also isn't anywhere even close to as bad as some other movies that came out recently. Unfortunately, the opening just really made me wish that they made one of these movies in the 90s that was set in World War II. That would have been really cool. I think my favorite scene in this is actually the scene where Indiana's talking at the college. Not the part when the class is bored. That makes me that makes me mad. But it's the part where he gets really excited talking about the Battle of Syracuse. It's really nice to see him excited about something, and I love it. I haven't seen anybody else talk about this scene, but I really like it. The action in this one is fine. There's nothing really especially stand out, but they're all serviceable. I kind of like the bit where they go underwater and face the eels. That's kind of cool. The scene with the tuk-tuks is fine. The horse chase in the streets of New York is fine, even though seeing Indiana in New York just looks wrong to me. I know that's the point, so that's not really a mark against this movie. It doesn't look right to me. Something I do like is that Indiana doesn't immediately get back into it. He's been retired for a while, and he takes a little bit of time to get back into adventuring mode. And even though he's old, he's not geriatric. He drank from the actual Holy Grail. He's gonna be spry as an old man. I think the biggest thing I hate about this movie is how Indy is sad and divorced at the beginning. Why do all these legacy sequels always have the original cast sad and lonely? Why are they always failures? I think it worked for Han Solo, but not here. He should have just been happy at the start, married to Marion. Just about to retire, and then he has to come out for one last adventure or whatever. Maybe he could have been the dean at the university or something, or curating a museum. That would have been nice. But no, he's sad and he's lonely. Him and Marion should have just been together. I know that they explain why they got divorced, and it's because Shia LaBeouf got fucking killed in Vietnam, which is one of the funniest things to ever happen in a movie ever. But still, I don't like it. I don't see a point to this. I didn't mention this before, but the wedding in Crystal Skull is good. I really like the relationship they have in that movie. This bit in Crystal Skull,
I'm sure I wasn't the only one to go on with my life. There must have been plenty of women for you over the years.
There were a few, but they all had the same problem.
Yeah, what's that?
They weren't you, honey.
that makes me really happy, and then they just broke up in between movies? Like, why? Just let them be happy. On another hand, the villain is alright in this. Mads Mikkelsen's always good, but even though his plan sucks, he's still good. I like his goons, too. The very 1960s serials goons, and that's great. There's a greasy little guy and a big strong boy. That's a lot of fun. Also, I had no idea that Antonio Banderas was in this movie until I watched it, and I love that he's just doing the Puss in Boots voice. I know it's not very far off from his real voice, but I just see Puss in Boots anytime he says anything.
Right? You cannot stay long. I have a method. Usually prevents the events.
Usually?
I don't know. I never counted. I am not really a math guy, you know?
Helena is just kinda whatever. I don't dislike her because she's woke or a Mary Sue or whatever, because she's neither of those things. She's just not very interesting. She is no more a Mary Sue than Indiana Jones is in any of these, maybe even less so. The whole point is that she's him, and she's like this because he failed her. You're not really supposed to like her, but I just don't find her super interesting. Also, I don't like the kid. There's no real reason he needs to be in this. Why are you here? Indiana himself is just fine. There really isn't much to say about him, to be honest. He's not bad, he's just whatever. He's got some great moments, and he's got some dumb ones. But he's fine. He's still Indiana Jones, and I like Indiana Jones, so he's good. I hate that Sal is only in this for like 5 minutes, though. Why couldn't he just come on the adventure? He's my favorite character not named Indiana Jones, and he's barely in this. Let him come along. Alright, let's get to the big issue here. There's time travel in this movie. I hate time travel. Unless it's Doctor Who, because there's no rules in that show. Time travel almost always makes everything it is involved with worse. So what do I think of the time travel in this? Well, it's still stupid, and it causes a paradox. The time travel mechanic itself is not the issue. The Antikythera, which I'm probably mispronouncing, isn't a time machine, which is good. It's essentially just a compass to a wormhole that only goes to a very specific point in space-time. Wormholes in Indiana Jones sounds very dumb when you first think about it, but when you consider God lives in a box, it's not that bad. That being said, the time travel itself is dumb. Archimedes wanted to pull help from the future to help win the battle, or something, but the thing is, they still lose this battle. Indiana and Helena show up, they kill the Nazi, and then they leave. So what was the point of all this? All it does is create an unnecessary paradox. What was the point? They go back, then immediately leave. That's it. Why would you do this? There's just no point. I know Volar thought it would take him to where he could assassinate Hitler or whatever, and Indiana says it doesn't work because of continental drift, which is dumb for a whole other reason, but that was also wrong, so I'll let it slide. Now, it is possible, it's very possible, that I missed a very important plot point of this time travel thing. I'll be honest, I'm kind of an idiot, and I'm also writing this after a few months of not seeing the movie, but I don't really care. I don't like it, it's dumb, and I don't want to think about it. But the fact that the Antikythera itself is not a time machine does make this better. They didn't do anything outright that would destroy the entire timeline, at least not that I can think of. I just don't like it. I do like that Indiana doesn't die in this. Legacy sequels like to kill the original cast a lot, and I like that he lives through this one. This might mean that they're gonna drag out his corpse later, but I don't know, we'll see. This one's a hard one to rate. Parts of it are great, most of it isn't. I guess I'll give it a 55% quality, 50% enjoyment. I really wanted to love this one, and it was a lot better than I thought it would be, but I just don't like it. But it's what we've been given, so I guess that's it for the whole franchise until Harrison Ford dies and they CGI his corpse into doing another one of these. Also, how did this movie cost $500 million? I don't understand that. Well, I suppose we've come to the end, and it's ranking time. I don't think this list will surprise anybody, but we're doing it anyways. At the bottom, Crystal Skull. It sucks and I hate it. 4 is Dial of Destiny. I hate it less, but I still don't like it. 3, Temple of Doom. A fun time, but the weakest out of the first 3. And honestly, 1 and 2 have gone back and forth my entire life. My answer might be different tomorrow, but today, Last Crusade is in second place, and Raiders is number 1. Like I said earlier, Last Crusade is probably better, but I gotta give the number 1 spot to Raiders. Alright, that's it, we're done. I don't have a lot more to say, to be honest. I like most of these movies, and I don't like the ones that are universally not considered to be very good. Why did I do this again? But yeah, that's about it. Sorry this one took forever. I know I say that every video, but I'm really trying, I swear. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, smash that bell or whatever, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.